Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound. Today's Monday, April 14th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. We got another exciting show today. There was big names on campus all over America. A lot of spring games got played this weekend. There was also some major quarterback drama. We're looking at Tennessee. We're going to cover it all, plus a lot of major developments with the top recruits in America. But before we get going, guys, do me a favor right now and hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, the On3 Recruits channel. Now, let's bring in the best recruiting insider in the country, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, let's talk about the number one prospect in America in the 2026 class, Jackson Cantwell. Last week, he told you that he didn't need to take any more OVs because why would he? Well, a couple days later, he locks one in with Oregon. It'll happen at the end of this week. That he's going to make a big decision. April 30th, just moments before we went to tape, big news that Jackson Cantwell will make his decision April 30th. So with all that information, what do you make of this last-minute visit to Oregon?
Well, he wants to get back out to Oregon one more time to make sure it is what he remembered it from his previous visit back in the summer. He also hasn't seen a spring practice up there yet. So he has a few minor details, as he said, that he wants to check out. He loves the culture, great head coach, talked about them winning, talking about the way that they develop his position. Dan Lanning's his favorite head coach throughout the process. So he's looking forward to getting back up there one more time. He's going to be there for their spring game, and then he is going to commit 2 days after leaving the campus. I had to look over at my old school calendar. So he's going to take his official visit April 26th and 27th. Then he told me that. And then our colleague Hayes Fawcett comes behind with the decision date of April 30th. I think Miami is a program that's really trended since the fall and had a great visit with them this spring. But you cannot sleep on Oregon for Jackson Cantwell here. And he is not one. Look, we see recruits. We know where they're going to go. They have an announcement date. We have their pre-write, or we know that they're trending heavily to a school, but then they'll still just take a random visit before they announce for the other school that we expect them to go to. Jackson Cantwell's not wasting his time. Like, he moved up his decision date because he's tired of wasting his time. He's like, these official visits, what more can I learn on these trips? I don't need to take them. But then after some thought, after some conversation, he's like, I do need to see some things at Oregon one more time after taking spring visits to Miami, Michigan, and Ohio State. So this trip to Oregon is meaningful. For whatever reasons he's going through his process, he would not be taking it and wasting his time and wasting other people's time if it wasn't one more important thing to do, one more important box to check before announcing his college decision on April 30th. So, he's going to be having major conversation. His representation is going to be having major conversation over the next 2 weeks about, obviously NIL. And then certainly he understands the football components and school components, having visited these programs a couple times. And then we'll see how it all adds up, and we'll see which program is lucky enough to land Jackson Cantwell on April 30th. Georgia's that program that led much of the process. I think in the old age of recruiting, he would have been a Bulldog. Georgia's still battling there. We'll see what happens, but definitely momentum around Miami, and then certainly Oregon coming into this official visit to Oregon before he announces.
So you don't think this visit to Oregon is more of a tell in terms of where he might end
where
up?
he's going?
Well, you could look at it two ways, right? He could be going out there to film his commitment video while on his official visit to Eugene, but he could also be going out there to say, hey, I need to look at Oregon one more time before I commit to either Miami or even Georgia, right? So he's been to Miami twice now. He wants to get back out to Oregon one more time.
All right, we will see. About 2 weeks from today, Jackson Cantwell making that decision. You guys let us know where you think he's going to end up. All right, let's talk Alabama recruiting. A big weekend in Tuscaloosa because it was A-Day. I don't know if that means it was a spring. I'm not sure what happened in Tuscaloosa, but it's still called A-Day. And you dropped a big prediction. Actually, a duo of predictions. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think Alabama continues to trend for two of the most coveted prospects in the state. The number 2 running back in the country is Xavier Crowell, the number 3 wide receiver in the land, Cedarian Morgan. Both had really good visits. Xavier Crowell talked about how he likes how they run the ball. He got to see A.K. Deere, the true freshman, in there running the ball. He said his favorite thing about Alabama in general is Robert Gillespie's coaching style, Coach Kalen DeBoer, everything about them. And for Cedarian Morgan, it was his first time getting around Coach Grubbs, the offensive coordinator. He loves Coach Shepard, the receivers coach, getting around Kalen DeBoer again. The bond that he has with the players and coaches, every time he's down there, they show him a good time. uh, what they've done with the best of the best at Alabama, the way that the coaching staff interacts with his family. Alabama's checking a lot of boxes. Look, these guys are going to continue through their process. Could it be a Georgia or Texas or Florida State that flips the script with Crowell? Could it be a Clemson, Auburn? And Auburn's in it for Crowell as well. But Clemson and Auburn, some of those schools that are in it for Cedarian Morgan. I like where Alabama stands. We've been saying it consistently on the whip around. Figured I'd just put in that on 3 RPM. We know things are fluid in recruiting, but I think all programs are chasing Alabama, who did land a commitment over the weekend from in-state edge rusher Cam Johnson. Things building for the Tide as they have the number 7 recruiting class in the country.
All right, want to talk about 2 more players that were in Tuscaloosa. Both are top 5 at their position. Talking Jet Washington, a safety from Bishop Gorman out there in Las Vegas. And the number 3 rated linebacker in the country, Sincere Johnson. He's from Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, well, Jet Washington told me that Alabama checks a lot of the boxes for him. The environment and the people in the building were great, made it feel like home. And his favorite thing is the resources and history they have of putting people to the next level. This was his second time on campus, his mom's first time. Alabama's obviously one of his favorites. And for Sincere Johnson, it was also his second time at Alabama, being able to come back and see everything, his great relationship with Coach Morrell and Coach DeBoer, growing that, calling them genuine guys. Got to watch practice, see how they operate, the energy the team brings. He talked about the brotherhood. Alabama's one of his top schools. The battle in Ohio State. Ohio State's had a bit of a pipeline to Glenville over the years. They don't bat 1,000 there, but they bat pretty close to that mark. So it's Ohio State and Alabama at the top. Then you got programs like Penn State and USC in play for Sincere Johnson, but Alabama's going to get him back for an official this summer, and they're certainly fighting the good fight for Sincere Johnson.
Anything left in your bag of intel after Alabama's big recruiting weekend?
Yeah, so the Crimson Tide hosted one of the top uncommitted quarterbacks in the country, Derek Zammit. He's a 4-star from New Jersey. It was his first time there. He is closing in on a college decision. Wouldn't be surprised if he's off the board by the end of the week. Alabama, Mississippi State, and Washington are the final 3. Alabama trailed those 2 coming in, but it was a fantastic visit. The tradition and history around the program, spending time with Nick Sheridan, Kalen DeBoer, the environment was amazing. That's Derek's words. And then the dad said, look, it was a visit that opened my son's eyes. So they left definitely impressed. They're going to go home. They're home now talking about things. I'm not ready to put him in Bama's class, but Bama gave him a lot to think about coming out of it. And then Titan Davis and his mom returned to the campus. Alabama's in the top 3 with Michigan and Nebraska. They're going to get him back for an official visit, but sounds like it was another good experience for him as well. And keep an eye on Alabama and on 300 safety, L.A. Jackson, Lasiah Jackson out of Lee County, Georgia. Alabama is one of the front runners for him.
Let's talk a little Notre Dame Fighting Irish recruiting because they stay hot. They got the number 5 ranked class in the country, up to 10 commits. After another big one on the weekend, offensive lineman Gregory Patrick jumps in the boat. And just a couple weeks from now, there could be another big one. Running back Javian Osborne, he was back on campus. He's going to make that commitment on May 3rd. But up next is Michigan. So how are you reading this Javian Osborne after another great visit to Notre Dame?
2 big commitments for Notre Dame. The Irish expected to land Bubba Frazier on Monday afternoon, a speedy receiver from Georgia. We're recording at 2:30, 4 o'clock announcement for Bubba Frazier, like the Irish for him. And then Javian Osborne, an electric visit. He said you can feel the fans are ready for the upcoming season. He was at the Blue Gold game. The weather was perfect. Talked about the excitement around this 2026 class, how it's coming together, and how he would be excited to be part of it. He talked about the tradition that you get to play at a high level education. You can't go wrong with Coach Sider, Coach Denbrock. and Coach Freeman. But Michigan's not going to just roll over here, Josh. Sharon Moore talked with JV and Osborne since the Notre Dame visit. The Wolverines are excited to get him back to campus this weekend. So while I love Notre Dame's position for JV and Osborne, they still got to clear one more hurdle, one more visit to Michigan before he commits on May 3rd.
All right, what else you got from this big weekend of Notre Dame recruiting?
Yeah, logged the new on-3 RPM in favor of the Irish for one of their top defensive line targets, Tiki Hola out of Bastrop, Texas. SMU and USC round out his top 3. He's committing May 10th. He said the Notre Dame environment is always on fire. Talked about the culture, the fans that were at the Blue Gold game. He's talked about it being a beautiful day, the life after football. He enjoyed meeting and talking to former players that were there this weekend to hear about their experience at Notre Dame and then hear about their lives now and what Notre Dame did for them. I like the way it's trending for the Irish. They also, we have them landing Frazier. They have Dylan Faison committed. We have them trending on the on-3 RPM for Tadon Finley, a 4-star receiver out of Texas. They want another 4-star receiver out of Texas, Braden Robinson. They're in the top 2 with Miami for Robinson. Robinson visited the Hurricanes last week, Notre Dame this past weekend. So another good visit for him, his second time at Notre Dame this calendar year. He got to hang out with Tim Brown, Ragged Ishmael, and Ricky Waters, Josh. 3 guys that were a thorn in the side of the Seminoles at various points in their career. I actually don't even know if that's true. But they were among the best of the best in the late 80s and early 90s. He was rubbing elbows with those guys. So big weekend at Notre Dame. They're trending for a couple more top targets as they build on a class that ranks number 5 nationally.
Let's talk Ohio State Buckeye recruiting. 5-star buzz out of Columbus. There's 3 big name 5-stars we want to talk about. Let's start with the number 1 linebacker in America, Tyler Atkinson from the state of Georgia. He's been to Columbus before. What did you make of this trip?
Well, we're acting up about this segment here with Tyler Atkinson on campus. He saw some acting up signs from Ohio State fans, or heard them saying that to him. He said that was pretty dope. Look, he really enjoyed getting around Coach Patricia, the new defensive coordinator for Ohio State. Coach Laurinaitis has been one of his favorites. He's really tight with the Buckeyes. Linebackers coach would love to kind of replicate his college career that he had at Ohio State. He thinks it's a place that he could really flourish on the field and off the field. And then just how Ohio State's coaching staff made his mom and sister feel at home. It was their first time on campus. Ohio State remains one of the major players for Tyler Atkinson moving forward. Obviously, Georgia, Auburn, Clemson, Oregon, USC, some of the others involved. But we know Ohio State's going to be in it till the end for Tyler Atkinson. Felix Ojo, the number 4 player in the country, number 3 offensive tackle, was at Ohio State on Friday before going down to Florida. And that's another one where I think that Ohio State is heavy in the mix for Ojo. He loved the culture, getting around the coaching staff. He's going to be back for an official visit. They're in the top 2 with Texas. There's some other contenders, but Ohio State is one of the front runners for Felix Ojo.
All right. Now, we also saw 5-star quarterback Ryder Lyons back on campus at Ohio State. He also hit Michigan. Ryder Lyons has been at USC recently, Ole Miss. A lot going on in his recruitment. What do you make of it?
Well, Ohio State and Michigan are just trying to make a move here, right? Same as Ole Miss, because BYU, Oregon, and USC have been the front runners for quite some time. He nearly committed to USC at one point, but he slowed down his process. Oregon's his best relationship, so certainly the Ducks are in there. He's going to take an LDS mission after his senior year, so you got to view him as a 2027 recruit, not 2026. Ohio State and Michigan now trying to get on the official visit list for Ryder Lyons. That'll be the true tell of how the weekend went at both programs. Had a great time. Both coaching staffs loved hosting Ryder Lyons and his family. But we won't know how real it is for them until he sets up an official visit.
Right. All right. Now, those aren't the only big names. Those are just the 5-stars that were in Columbus. But who else that was on campus do you think Ohio State has a good shot at landing?
Well, still love my on-3 RPM in favor of Ohio State for local 4-star running back Favor Key. He visited 4 times this spring. He'll be back for his official June 6th. I think that's when that one happens. Derek Cooper is the on-3 industry's number 3 running back in the country. I liked where Georgia was coming into the visit. I think there's some buzz that Ohio State has evened that up. So Buckeyes, one of the favorites for Derek Cooper. He's going to take his official visits this summer. There's other contenders, but Georgia and Ohio State are definitely very much in the mix for him. Caden Dixon Wyatt's a four-star receiver from California that visited Ohio State twice this spring. I think the Buckeyes are setting the tone there. Oregon, USC trying to change that. And then we talked about that Glenville, Ohio State pipeline with Sincere Johnson in the earlier segment of the show because he visited Alabama for A-Day. Ohio State and Alabama battling for him. Ohio State offered his teammate, defensive lineman Jameer Perez, during his visit to campus. Now, he told me that Wisconsin still leads. Luke Fickell, who's got all those Ohio ties, has put the Badgers in good position for Jameer Perez. But Ohio State, if they're pushing for a guy from Glenville, again, they don't bat 1,000, but they bat close to it. A couple other high-profile defensive ends, Derek Coleman-Brusa, who Ohio State's extremely high on, and Landon Barnes from the Lone Star State. They were on campus. Ohio State definitely impressed both of them. And a new on-3 RPM in favor of Ohio State. Their top running back target in 2027, David Gabriel Georges. He's from Canada, but he's playing his high school football in the state of Tennessee for powerhouse Baylor School. Carlos Laughlin's been recruiting him since he was in the 8th grade. He's our number 3 running back in the country at on-3. He's the number 1 running back in the land at Ohio State. I think the Buckeyes lead. My on-3 RPM reflects that.
Let's talk some Georgia Bulldog recruiting. Steve, there's 2 elite tight ends on campus from either side of the country, and I get the feeling that Georgia could end up landing both of them.
I certainly like the way it's trending for both of them right now. They already have Lincoln Keys committed from Saline, Michigan. He earned his opportunity in camp. Kirby Smart, Todd Hartley and company beat out all the Midwest powerhouses to land him earlier in the cycle. They're in the thick of it for Caden Prothro from in-state. He's been to Georgia a bunch, including a couple times this spring. He always enjoys being at Georgia. Look, it's obvious the production that they have at the position, who they've put out and into the NFL, Brock Bowers being the latest, and then just how emphasized that position is within the offense. It's easy to see why these guys are so high on Georgia. It was a fantastic visit for Mark Bowman, the Mater Day standout, who has been to 2 straight G-Days now. He got to see practice on Friday, then went to G-Day on Saturday. They loved Kirby Smart on the microphone at practice. The biggest takeaway is the type of team that Kirby Smart puts together year in and year out. Tough, plays hard. Just that culture and then the history that they have in college football. They spent a lot of time with Coach Smart on the trip. And I think this is a player that Georgia has at the top of their board, regardless of position, alongside the likes of Jackson Cantwell, Jared Curtis, Tyler Atkinson. So I think Georgia's way in it for Mark Bowman. They're probably the leader for Caden Prothro going into his summer official visits. They have Keys committed, so it'll be interesting to follow Georgia tight end recruiting moving forward.
All right, you got any more intel coming out of Athens on another successful G-Day?
Yeah, Malachi Lee, he's a top 100 offensive lineman, number 1 player in Ohio, took his official visit. I haven't written the story yet, just caught up with him prior to us recording this show, but he had a great time at G-Day, high energy from the coaches and players and fans. The guys played with heart and effort, had a chance to see Coach Searles in action. The O-line looked really good, especially the underclassmen. He emphasized, he talked about the strong coaches, how they build great players and great men. On and off the field, they're tough, but the bar is set high. So it's a place that he thinks can get the best out of him. Georgia loves Malachi Lee. He is a guy that they're pushing hard for. So a really good official visit. Alabama, Michigan, USC, some of the others. Texas, they're battling for Malachi Lee.
Let's talk some Florida Gator recruiting as the Gators, they're pushing for another top 10 class under Billy Napier in this weekend. They had 5-star offensive tackle Felix Ojo at their spring game. He's out of the state of Texas. What do you think about Ojo and UF?
Well, they're trying to make up ground. You know, Texas and Ohio State are the leaders, and you got some other programs in play like Oklahoma, but he had a good experience at Florida. Talked about how it was nice and beautiful. The facilities are some of the best he's seen. And it was nice talking to Coach Napier and Coach DeCoster about his fit in the offense and how they would utilize him. Great visit, he said. we'll see where they stand this summer regarding official visits and how they stack up. But it was a visit he wanted to take. Had a good time at Florida. They certainly didn't hurt their chances.
All right. Speaking of leading, does UF lead for top 10 defensive lineman Vodney Cleveland?
I think so. Talking to some sources that spent time with him over the weekend, that is the vibe on Bodney Cleveland, the number 10 defensive lineman in the country. He said as much to our Corey Bender. So Florida definitely in a really good spot for Bodney Cleveland. This could be a terrific defensive line class as a whole for Florida. I think they're setting the pace for Baldwin Sony, a defensive lineman from over the pond, I believe Germany, that's playing his high school football in Virginia, but Florida has prioritized him as much as anybody. So really like where Florida stands with him. And then Kendall Gerville, they're certainly one of the front runners for him as well. So Florida trying to put together a special defensive line haul, a massive guys that just fit that SEC stereotype at the point of attack.
What else are you hearing coming out of Gainesville after spring game weekend?
Well, certainly one of the more prized recruits that were on campus this weekend was defensive back Aiden Pouncey. That last name certainly very familiar in Florida circles. He talked about how Billy Napier has changed the culture. It's a winning culture now, and that Coach Napier has brought in the right people in the building. If you were asking me where I thought he would go to college, he's coming off great visits to LSU and Michigan and Notre Dame and Miami. But I like the way I like Florida's position for Aiden Pouncey. We'll see what happens as he goes into the official visits. And then tight end Kikua Amua from IMG Academy. It was a special visit for him. Florida's trending on the on-3 RPM, but he loves the offense, the way they use the tight end. So Florida in a good position for him.
Let's head down south, talk a little Miami Hurricane recruiting, and this weekend it was all about elite wide receivers. Speaking of, number 1 wide receiver Tristan Keys was back on campus. I mean, Steve, wasn't he just there less than a month ago?
Yeah, it's second visit this spring. Look, he committed to LSU, loves the Tigers and his opportunity there, but he's still continuing through his process. He had previously scheduled visits. He's fulfilling that itinerary. He's been back over to Ole Miss, been back down to Texas A&M, been over to Auburn. Now he's back at Miami. Receiver remains a major point of emphasis for Mario Cristobal, Kevin Beard, and this staff. And that's obviously starts with the number 1 player at the position in the country, Tristan Keys. You got to get around the guys, got to see how the offense runs, how it's installed, enjoyed being around the players and coaches, likes the people there. His mom said they enjoyed the vibe. Santana, Keys. Look, Miami, I think they'll get him back for an official visit, and they'll continue chipping away at the number 1 receiver in the country.
All right. Now, he wasn't the only top wide out there. There was also number 3 ranked wide receiver for On3, Jace Matthews. He was on campus. Where's Miami fit in this recruitment?
Well, he said the environment was great, enjoyed his position meetings with Kevin Beard. He said that was extraordinary. He says they play a lot of freshmen. So, look, he's been to LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, Texas A&M this spring, also got over there to Miami. They're one of the front runners in this recruitment.
All right. Last month, Miami flipped a DB from Georgia, and then over the weekend, I should say, another Georgia commit was on campus. This time it's wide receiver Vance Spafford out of California. Does Miami have a chance for the flip with this one as well?
Absolutely. I mean, Georgia's done a good job of putting out fires in this recruitment, but they're going to keep popping up from now until the early signing period. He had an amazing time at Miami and really enjoyed the talk with the coaches, and it was amazing. Look for Hayes Fawcett to drop his official visits here soon. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami's on there.
All right. Any other intel you're hearing out of Coral Gables on another big visit weekend?
Yeah, look, they're in the thick of it to flip Karan Maycock, an on 300 linebacker from Miami Central. He's committed to Florida State, but they're in the heart of that battle. They continue to chip away at on 300 cornerback Brody Jennings out of Jacksonville, who is committed to Michigan right now. They made an impression on Bryce Perry Wright, the number 10 edge rusher in the land when he visited during the week. Look, Miami hosted like 85 to 90% of their top targets this spring. That obviously included Jackson Cantwell, who's now going to commit on April 30th. Oregon's getting an official visit the weekend leading up to that decision. Miami has been surging since a visit in the fall, another terrific multi-day visit in the spring. Georgia's been a mainstay at the top. Oregon's been a mainstay at the top, but Miami right there in this one for the number one offensive tackle in the land, the number one player in the country, Jackson Cantwell. What a tone-setting commitment that could be going into the summer for Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. But he's going to Oregon first. That visit, he is not taking that visit because he just feels like he deserves some surf and turf, and he's just going on a visit to take a visit. That visit means something. He's not wasting his own time. He's not wasting Oregon's time. Miami's done a great job with their time in this recruitment. That Oregon visit is a hurdle in some shape or form for Miami, Georgia, and others heading down the stretch of the recruitment for Jackson Cantwell. And that'll do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits page so you are up to date on the best recruiting information, from the inside scoop to the Wiltfong Whiparound and all our other various videos that we are dropping left and right. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on Thursday for the next episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound.